So could you tell us a little bit in more specificity about your current role, your position, and your responsibilities? Because I know that you are an editor as well as a professor.
Yeah, I have a lot of hats that I wear. So I'm an associate professor at Florida State University College of Social Work. And so my work there is that I teach in the master's, the bachelor's, and the doctoral programs. I teach a wide range of classes that are about human development or child welfare and child maltreatment, or methodology. I'm a qualitative methodologist. So that's my teaching, and I work in the curriculum. I chair the academic affairs committee of the college, and I'm very committed to the making sure that our curriculum is empirically supported and a holistic perspective, and it prepares the next generation of social workers. And then my research also falls into that some of my job responsibilities. And as I've already told you, that my research focuses on youth who have been involved in the foster care system.
Why is it that that was a spark for you?
So for me, it really goes back to I met a young woman who was aging out of care, and I was a research assistant at the time, and my job was to interview her about her experiences aging out. And I was sitting there, I was in my 30s, and I'm sitting across the table from this 18-year-old young woman, and I was just in absolute awe of her, that she was couch surfing while working multiple entry-level jobs that were paying slightly better than minimum wage. She was paying her bills, her cell phone. She was navigating life as an adult all on her own. And she had so many obstacles that she was, I mean, they were big, and yet she was just able to overcome them. And I was sitting there, and as I was talking to her, I'm thinking, my parents, I was living in the same city at the time as my parents, and I was thinking like, wow, I go over to my parents every Sunday, and I get dinner, and I do my laundry there, and they send me home with leftovers.
Hate to interrupt, but you said you were in your 30s.
I was in my 30s. So here I am, over 10 years older than she is, and my parental and familial support was so much greater, and the things that she was having to navigate, like were just astounding. And so it was really the interactions with her and then subsequent youth that I met that made me commit to doing this work. I was in my 30s. We as children, regardless of our age, benefit from parental support. And knowing that many of those who are aging out of foster care and transitioning into adulthood are doing this on their own is inconsistent with the social norms. And I just want to be part of the solution.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, that's a powerful motivator, because the motivation will always be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
One way or another, the problem is always going to be there. Wow. Well, can you tell us a little bit about your most recently published research? I believe, like I mentioned earlier, one of the big people, Amy Salazar.
Oh, absolutely. And let me tell you, it was a privilege to work with Amy Salazar. But she reached out to me and said, I have some data looking at post-college success. And so we worked together in the last year, and our article just came out in Children and Youth Services Review, and it's called Factors Associated with Post-College Success for Foster Care Alumni College Graduates. And I'm incredibly excited about this. And I don't want to talk your ear off, but the gap that we were trying to address is that we know college education is beneficial to people in society alike. That's probably everyone in Positive Pathways knows that. And we know that foster care alumni pursue higher ed at lower rates than their peers, though they have similar aspirations, right? We all know that. Right. And we know that a college education is associated with positive outcomes, with increased incomes and lower unemployment. And that's some of Mark Courtney's recent work. Yeah. And we know that there's a lot of evidence that foster care alumni who complete college are going to be better off, and yet they still struggle. So what we were our research question broadly looks at is what factors are related, what factors in college are associated with better employment, finance, and mental health outcomes for foster care alumni college graduates.
Okay, and I love those words, post, college, and success. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, please, tell us how you went about studying this topic and what you found.
Yeah, so and to be honest, like some of this is like the anecdotal evidence that I have. So from some of the graduates that I know, is that there's still a lot of instability in housing and financial hardship, and problems navigating relationships. So I very much the anecdotal evidence. We actually saw some of these in the study findings. So we used a sample of approximately, well, not approximately, I can tell you the sample size. So a sample of,
That's the whole
262.
Thing,
It's a
262.
262. We did a cross-sectional survey of adults with foster care experience who had attended college and had participated in the Casey Family Scholarship Program, or the Foster Care Successes National Scholarship Program. So and I will tie this back because I know we're talking, this is a Florida audience, and I'll make it real for Florida. So these are people that received these scholarships 2001 to 2009, and what we did is that we had our dependent variables. We're looking at unemployment, home ownership, satisfaction with financial situation, job satisfaction, and mental health. And then we looked at different domains. So we used the model that's probably familiar to some of you. It's the It's My Life framework for transitioning out of foster care that the Casey family uses. So we looked at these different domains, cultural and personal identification. Cultural and personal identity formation, supportive relationships and community connections, physical and mental health, life skills, education, employment, and housing. So we looked at these as the independent variables. And then I won't get into depth about the analysis because it's technical and you can read it best in the article. But we did some descriptive statistics, and then we did some multiple regressions for each dependent variable. And let me get to the findings. So when we looked at the different variables, what we found is that a lot of the factors were not significant. And one thing that we really found is that there were only 4 indicators that were found to have a positive association with some of these. And so it turns out that there were factors of during college life that really impacted post-college. And those were supportive relationships and community skills, life skills, and physical and mental health. So these were the factors that really seemed to contribute to having positive outcomes in the domains that I mentioned.
Excuse me, fiscal or physical and mental health?
Physical and mental health.
Physical, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, very good.
So those were the 3 areas, and in some ways that made sense to us, but really it's some of the things that can trip you up as an adult are about being able to pay your bills on time, understanding credit, negotiating relationships, signing a lease, buying a car. Like those are the kinds of life skills that I think that really can trip someone up. So I think it does make sense that having increased life skills during college better prepare someone for post-college outcomes.
Okay, well, you know what though? People at this point are probably saying, what do you mean by post-college outcomes? So what is it that was, the dependent variable? What was success?
So success was honestly about employment, was if they were employed or unemployed.
Okay, I mean, that's important.
Yep. We looked at home ownership as a variable. Yes or no. Satisfaction with financial situation, if yes or no, making it dichotomous. We had job satisfaction, and that we had it on a Likert scale from 1 very dissatisfied to 4 very satisfied. And then the variable that we were able to go into the most depth on was mental health. We used it as a continuous variable.
Yeah.
And we measured it as, in the last 30 days, how many days of your mental health was not good, and then we reverse coded it.
Okay.
So that's how we measured our outcomes.
Okay. Okay.
But I do want to mention one more finding that
Yeah.
I don't want to gloss over. It's a very central part
Sure.
of the paper and of great concern. And I want to talk about this when we talk about how this, we need to think about this in the context of Florida.
Okay.
So within all of our outcomes, there were racial disparities.
Yes, yes, I noticed that.
And
That was
our
very-
Black participants had poorer outcomes across every single post-graduation domains.
Wow.
And so we believe strongly that this is not about ability, that this is a sign of some of the systemic racism,
Yeah.
and the additional challenges of possibly being Black and in higher ed. And that we know that institutions of higher ed, just like child welfare institutions and every other institution that we have in the United States, has problems with racism. And so we believe that one of the real take-home points is not just about the importance of relationships and community connections and building life skills and addressing health and well-being, but broadly, we need to address racial equity.
So you just emphasized the
racial equity.
The racial equity, right. And so do you think that that is particular to the fact that that they were in foster care? You think that has an impact, or is this just the society that we're living a different manifestation of the issue?
I think that probably it does. It's a cumulative disadvantage. So my guess is that some of this came from the experience of being in foster care, some of it from society broadly, the higher ed. So I would suspect that there are multiple places that we and Positive Pathways can really address racial equity that hopefully would reduce these disparities in the future.
I feel like Florida has really tried to do some innovative things.
Absolutely.
And our institutions, our colleges and our universities, especially our universities, proportionally speaking, have really made an effort to reach out to these young adults and to, look at them holistically, which is another recommendation, I think, that what you say. So what I'd like to do at this time is hear a little bit from you, your findings vis-a-vis what you know is going on, maybe at FSU or in other places in Florida, and what's good and what still needs work, especially in the racial equity component.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time thinking about implications and thinking about what recommendations can we take from this research, as well as like the broad body of research. So while I'm presenting Dr. Salazar's research and my research today, it's in the broader context of the research about higher education for those who have foster care experience. And I think that there's a growing sense of understanding that we need to prepare for life after graduation, that getting students to college, we know that it's not just about admissions. We know that there needs to be the social scaffolding and social support that many of these students who would be first generation students will benefit from. But we need to think about how that needs to carry on post-graduation, so that it's, going back to me being 30 years old and having dinner with my parents, having relational permanency, having advice, having support and encouragement, having someone to turn to it at the time of crisis, and making sure that this is something that all of our students are graduating with. A diploma alone is inadequate. Like,
right.
And that's, yes, it's absolutely right now central to getting jobs that pay livable wages in the current economy. But we need to think about more. We need to focus on relationships and making those community connections. Yeah. And we also need to really address mental well-being, thinking about how we can prepare our graduates to be in the workforce, but be in relationships and not just partnerships and relationships and friendships, but thinking it broadly about relationships with coworkers, landlords, right. colleagues, and just thinking about how to develop that social network. And as for the racial equity, I mean, that's where, I mean, that's the million-dollar question right now. And I think that these last 18 months, as we've been dealing with the pandemic and some of the social political strife and those concerns about how we've seen African Americans being killed by police and the systematic racism, and it's a lot of people are starting to talk about reimagining child welfare, rethinking systems, and dismantling racism. And I think that we have to think about this. I think that it's going to be something that we can use a broad framework that looks at equity, and yet it's going to be very much tailored to individual programs. And what it looks like is going to be specific for those who we're serving and working with. And some of it really involves going back, and I'll take this for full circle, listening to the young people we're serving and working with, and what are their needs, and how can we address them. And making sure that we just continue to do better, and that we're not satisfied with where we currently are.
You know, again, I want to just to close out, I want to ask you, what next? So what what are you studying next? What's your next a book, a chapter? What are you working on right now that we can expect?
Well, a couple of things that I'm working on right now. One that I'm most excited about, it's been years in the making. I have a book contract with Oxford University Press.
Wow.
And my manuscript's due in just a few short weeks. And the book title is called Some Type of Way. And it is an ethnographic study of young people aging out of foster care. And so I follow 5 young people throughout their transition out of care, and look at how they receive services and how they negotiate daily life. So I'm incredibly excited about that work, and see it as a contribution to the field. And the fact that it's not just providing the young people's perspectives, it's also the service providers, and looking at the systemic barriers that thwart both of their efforts at many times. So I hope that will be well received by the practice community, who's one of my main target audiences. The other, I'm doing a conceptual piece right now that is a revise and resubmit. So I'm feeling optimistic it will be published. And it is looking at a conceptual framework for post-secondary education attainment of parents in and aging out of foster care. So it's looking at those who are in foster care and aging out, and parenting, and what do we need to support them in pursuing post-secondary education. So it's I'm working with a great team of colleagues doing this conceptual work. And the exciting thing about it is that I have practitioners involved as well as researchers. So it's a massive team of 7 of us writing on this, and it's been a really great learning experience. And then finally, the third thing that I'm working on is that's relevant to this is I'm working with Jennifer Farinella, who collected data from graduate students with foster care experience, and looking at the graduate, the experience of graduate students, and how we can smooth the transition from undergraduate to graduate, and what is necessary to be successful in graduate programs. So I'm really excited to that, because a lot of my research about outcomes with post-secondary education, when I'm looking at them as they're graduating from the Unconquered Scholars Program here at Florida State, is I'm seeing a high level of enrollment in graduate school. So I want to know what's happening there. And just spoiler alert, struggles don't magically disappear in graduate school. But that work, we should be submitting that and be ready to present that work in the next several months.
No problem. Well, it's been wonderful to spend this extra time with you, Lisa. I look forward to turning this this time together into a little newsletter article, as well as our podcast, and then to play it probably even as a webinar in the future.
So thank you so much.
Like you said earlier, in person, virtually.
I know, in person, virtually. Lovely.
Thank
so
you
good to
so
see
much.
you.
Same here. Goodbye.
Bye.
Program in
Okay.
progress. Great. So listen, can we just have a bit of banter ahead of time?
Great.
Well, I'm pleased to be here with Lisa, Dr. Lisa Schelbe. Lisa and I go back a while. Back, I think,
Yes.
in got her doctorate, right? You were a student, I think that first presentation.
I think the first presentation I was on the job market
Yeah,
at that point. Yes.
excellent, excellent. And since then, you've been consistently making an effort to make your mark, and you have been making your mark in the field. And I've been very encouraged and happy to see that you've been interacting with some of the big names, right, in this field. And so I'm just really excited that we have this chance to talk. And I really want to thank you for making the time to talk to us today about your study, your research, and your positive pathway to today.
Yes.
So Dr. Lisa Schelbe, please introduce us to you a little bit and tell us about the positive pathway that you have taken to today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rios, for having me today. And my sincerest apologies for not being able to attend the Positive Pathways call in person, or I guess virtually, live. I teach class on that conflicts with the time, which is why I really haven't been able to participate in the calls. But my pathway from where I started to today has been a winding road, and yet one of the very consistent things has been about my commitment to improve outcomes for those who have been involved in the foster care system. So my work started in graduate school, looking at foster care alumni and those who were transitioning out of the foster care system. And what I started looking at largely in an ethnographic manner, looking at their lives holistically. But in the more recent years, I've really narrowed my focus, and I look specifically at two outcomes, broadly looking at education, post-secondary education attainment, and parenting. And the reason that I'm excited about working with those who have been involved in foster care is their resilience, their grit, the adversity that they have overcome. And to be honest, I feel a personal responsibility. When I pay for an oil change, it's my oil change. When I pay for a haircut, it's my haircut. I'm a taxpayer. It is my child welfare system. It is my foster care system. So I believe very strongly in the need to improve the system for those who are within it. And I feel that one of the ways I can best do this is through amplifying their voices. So my work is largely qualitative, and I'm interested in highlighting their lived experiences so that policymakers and practitioners can learn about what's working and what we can do better.
That's wonderful. And I'm so encouraged, by that line of research. Of course, it's been something I've been involved with as a practitioner for years. I've wished that I could have more time to research and disseminate, but I'm so happy that friends like you are doing that.